that ended with the front of Cinema Yosemite, a graphic of that. Not sure why. Maybe we'll figure it out as we go along here. It's posted July the 20th, 2021. It is number 3,300. It's called Ferdinand, or Some Business, a bit of spontaneity, and more reasons to celebrate. Hello again. Thank you so much for dropping by. Thank you so much for dropping by. And you might notice that these lines come across a little bit poetic, a little less poetic than usual, if that's possible. A bit more, there may be no words to come up with here given the lines being compared, but please go ahead and imagine this to be something in real time, a bit more casual with gratitude, but just between me and you, collegial, conversational. Would you like to have one? I'm very available. Just thought I'd add that. I do realize how tricky it might be to suggest that the line, or that as opposed to any other, might be less normal than normal, given that our garbled author, that's yours truly, being an upstanding, that is as far up as can be stood in such a place as this, and dutiful citizens of haphazard land, a country or parcel of land of which he has always been its humble ambassador. Okay, it's singular resident at most often times. This just states a singular resident. So you will always be welcome. You have an open invitation, and if you might want a fresh key to this fine and beautiful city-shaped parcel or parcel-shaped city for your very own pocket, then please message me, and a key will just that easily be yours. Notice, of course, that I have wandered off course, and what a lovely thing it would be. Yes, it would not hurt to have a bit of company now and again, would it? I have had plenty of time to study up on being a most impeccable host. It would be so very lovely to put that research to some actual use. This was a giddy prospect, but I once again got a bit derailed. Where was I? Or yes. And as far as the veracity of all that I am presently relaying, well, I can say with some confidence that you'd be more correct no matter your answer. What I mean, my dear friends, is that if you feel me sincere, you think that perhaps I am pulling your leg, or anything you might think of me that might have my truth, my veracity, exist at any point in the line between those polar extremes, then you'd, of course, be at least 100% correct, no matter where you were. But take it from me, its mouth. I swear it's true, every bit of it. But also, and more importantly, I humbly beseech you to tell me in earnest, precisely what best you would like me to be in correlation with that which is the message which I insist upon getting to you all today. Am I pandering? But in due time, my dear guests, that's enough conundrums. Let's get on with the poem, which for now I will say is mostly just a list. What do you think about that? I wonder. But first, I feel the need to remind you each that all this wondering about what might this be or that, which has some of us slogging through trying to make too much sense. Well, if you recall, my message was, I do hope, quite clear that don't worry so much about making any sense of anything, because by the time this verse gets to you, all such queries will be quaint and yet totally moot. for this verse, each line, indeed, this entire blank is whatever it is that you want to call it. It does what you say it does. It is what you say it's called, should you so choose to call it an it. Or say that it does what? The choices, my dear, as to whether this here bunch of words is a thing at all, is or at least will quite soon be yours to call, or not. But just for fun, and just for a few minutes until I'm finished, I have just now decided that I shall call it for now Ferdinand. And while you have no way to know that I'm scrolling up to the top of this virtual page right at this very moment to more properly entitle this piece, this poem, this list, this blank, so that by the time your eyes have by the time your eyes first meet with this pixel page, you will have already, or my rendition of it, you will already have discovered that the super title note has, so far as you're concerned, always been none other than Ferdinand. So how about that? I welcome you to fill in the blank however you please, displacing all other titles, all other such names that have come before it. As iteration, if not affirmation, of to whom our multi-personality page-dwelling species rightfully belongs. Is this just going to be just a bunch of ruses, I'll just say? I was trying to think of the Shakespearean, or the Shakespearean, but Hitchcockian kind of red herring. This is all just red herrings. I don't even know. Once, okay. Next up, in small order of business regarding yesterday's anachronism, the one you see next as you scroll down, and then I just read because after I posted it, I realized I had perhaps let out some important details about the poem that might more readily allow you to celebrate the birthday that is mentioned in the title. None of this matters, of course, as the gift, as we know from my all too inordinately long lecture, is no longer mine, but still here are a few things I would have liked you to be aware of, as I think it just might have been helpful, so it should be quite easy for me to relay. The title, as noted, Cinema Yosemite, is the name of a small book of poems, according to the poem as posted last evening, turned 20 years old this year. And this is the truth, and furthermore, it was my first singularly authored book of poetry that a publisher would be so kind to take the process to task. That is, to see through to its birth as a book. That publisher, Pressed Wafer, run by Bill Corbett, was pretty much the dear and very missed friend Bill Corbett, who was, I would always say, and still do, like a second father to me, briefly, who heartbreakingly passed away a few short years ago, and at a time for me that was so rough that we had not very recently even corresponded, and I didn't find out about his passing until it had been a few months. I believe, since he was gone. So as you might can now just a little bit, as you might can now see just a little bit clearer, a celebration of a poetry or even the existence of this book is for me synonymous with the celebration, with celebrating life and work and generosity of spirit. of being that dad who was already enough dad to his kids, and to so many fortunate souls who were lucky enough to have when crossing paths with Bill, not gone by unnoticed. He was so very good like that, and so presenting that simple birthday place to you was not without some small amount of misty-eyed nostalgia, wishing as I often do that he were still here. Also, of some importance, and to clear up its, I think, a necessary air of mystery, its every line was each of the first lines from each of my poems within the chapbook. Poems called Send Me Yosemite, which is a bit, to me, astoundingly just turned 20. Almost all the poems were written within a year after I moved from one Bay Area to another. I'm almost begrudgingly, as it were, from Boston to San Francisco. It was the summer of 2000. It is among the gorgeous slopes that exist within this city's perimeter that I have now lived for a long duration of this lifetime, this my home. And so please know the song is one for me of familiarity, comfort, and gratitude, as well as the countless other feelings and things I feel for and owe to this place, my home. I will quickly just add I've also lived in other places like Ohio, Michigan, Jamaica Plain, Boston, or Jamaica Plain, Boston, Massachusetts, with one tiny stop for a detour in Oregon. And I spent all of my years of growing up in Arkansas, so home is never exactly one place. And whatever it means and whatever it is, it's much more complicated than what I might say about it. And I would dare say that I am not alone in this lack, this consternation, this inability to tell you quite all that there is about what, to me, home is in totality, in abstract, what home is and what it means to me. So now that we're all caught up, here is my silly new list for you today, which is a few first lines from the poems that haven't been born yet, but nevertheless have first lines in no particular order at all, and with me a bit wary at what this might look like when it's put together. But let us not worry. There aren't all that many. Here we go. At Starbucks on Clay Street, across from the Transamerica building, 4 days after Christmas, I met a man who claimed to be Meyer Lansky's grandson. This one's just a title and an epigraph that I am not sure I am reading correctly, but the title is Prince Pence the Fancy Pants, and the epigraph, Memory is Weird, which I have noted as attributed to Tim Yu. Tim? The one in only an epigraph, which I have here is attributed to Francesca Leah Block. He reminded her of a cigarette. I'm not going to call this one Working Class Dog because it's about me. That's why. All she could think of to say was love is a dangerous angel. This unfinished piece has the title The Diabetic. It's one I spent a lot of time on. And the first lines are crashed like an airplane emerging nose down from low hanging cloud at a velocity best described by those looking directly up at it as run. Here's another one. The years were not easy on his words. Can you imagine? Then there is this is the title Psychedelic Trip Out of Nowhere and Fast to Hell with a Brief Detour Through Elysium. It was a subtitle too. It has a subtitle too, which is an international suspense tragedy. This is one that I remember being quite eager about a week or two ago. That begins: the bullies on the balcony got their comeuppance. 10 purple nurples applied liberally by each sophomore member of the color guard. I had a bunch of acrostic poem drafts, for a long poem in which there would be sets of fictional groups cross over the worlds, cross over into the worlds of separate fictional gangs. See, for an example, the poem posted last Thursday entitled The Ebony Mask. But there's one from that group. Rescue isn't going well. Hey, demons. Hey, dickwads. Let's just eat Robin. And if you read the first letters of every line of that poem, or that piece of that poem, it's Riddler. So that would have been the full poem, probably, or a piece of it. There are quite a few more, but I'll close with some of the first lines from this unfinished poem, which I had entitled The Mortality Smusher. A bunch of bad guys come a rumbling through. It was about the time of a superhero convention. Oh, yeah? And then what happened? So much is always happening that at times it seems impossible if one were to try to make such a list, and I do. I also trust this likely will come as no surprises to you. Open yourself up to the right frequencies, and these channels are so beautiful that there are plenty to go around for all of us. Just keep listening to no matter what else you might be doing. Then you might hear something with writing. Start writing it down as much as you can, just about what you hear, just as you hear it, pretty much exactly. Then once you have time to look down, at the pages, and pages of so very often infinitely fascinating collage, such an astonishing admixture of words, of just stuff you pick up, how wild and how damned educational it becomes at times. Quite often, I'll even say, at least for me, the abutments, the juxtapositions of life are vastly entertaining, enlightening, to be sure, and just mind-blowing. If one were to pause to consider the what that comes next to in comparison to what just came previous, not to mention the other infinite directions that to which one piece can be cross-circuited, so just as much from the let it go where it may, what can be strictly imposed, a decision by you or me to take one thing then another, then slap it together, whether literally or virtually, this new amalgamation that can almost always, with some observation and a bit of tinkering or scientific or artistic deducting, come out something so fine that it may be the foundation upon which you lead your existence. Oh, it is so extensive to even begin to try to define a process that can be catalyst so such that can be catalyst to such sublimity. Good night, and thank you all and each for this unquantifiable amount of good stuff. Make more, why don't we? Garbled good stuff at that. Anyway, be more, be more. Drop by, read a little, say hello. I always say drop by. I always say call. I always say engage. Nobody ever does that. Be more, drop by, read a little, say hello, tell me something, how you're doing. You don't know how honest and absolutely earnest I am when I actually say that. Tell me something, how you're doing. It really does not matter at all what, but I can say that there surely is a good chance that it will turn out to be something so big we will have just as much fun and get into just as much trouble and spend even more time trying to qualify it. I'm putting a little reminder in to my calendar as I type this last bit. Gotcha! The reminder is always, and has ever, since I can remember, been already there. This is the longest poem I think I've given.